Ranjana, it's a privilege to have you as a guest on the podcast. Thanks very much for accepting the invite.
Pleasure.
And Ranjana, you are recognized by the Global Women Leader magazine as one of the top 10 women leaders in Mauritius. Tell us a bit about who you are, especially for those who don't know what you do, and a bit about your background.
Thank you. Thank you really for having me here. I think it's an occasion to be on the other side, on the front of the camera, because I'm usually behind the camera,
Absolutely.
behind the scenes. So I am the CEO and the founder of Sphere Media Technologies. Sphere Media is a digital marketing agency, a brand management agency that I founded in 2012. And I started my marketing career in the UK. I was working for eBay for a while, and then I worked in the agency side of things, and I was handling Apple and iTunes across 18 countries, revenue generation for them across 18 countries. And then I moved back to Mauritius in 2009, and I launched the agency in 2012. So
what does Sphere Media Technologies do? If you can describe what services you offer.
Sure. So Sphere Media, we provide services like brand strategy. So we define the positioning of a brand, where they should position themselves. So we do mostly online, Facebook, any other social media platform, website, where the audience is listening to them.
Yeah.
So this is what we do. We start with the brand strategy, and then there's the whole execution, the brand guidelines, the website, the content creation. We talk content now, No brand would exist without being visible and having the right content online. So at Sphere Media, we have, we are not huge. We have a team of 11 people in the operations, and we are there alongside our client to just put the client forward. So branding, strategy, website development, mobile app development, even technology solutions, and the whole content side of things, graphic design, animation, video, coverage, events coverage, all of that we do for our clients.
That's very interesting. Branding for me is how you put across a message. This podcast aims at exploring how we communicate better in a business environment. And each episode has a specific theme. The theme of this episode is how we make complex messages land, how to put across complex messages. In my line of work as a lawyer, you have cases sometimes where the points of law are not clear.
Thankfully so, right?
Absolutely. That's what makes the job interesting, intellectually stimulating.
Yes.
And of course, we love those types of cases. When they come, you are looking at sophisticated arguments sometimes, points of law on which the court hasn't decided before. We're looking at perhaps how different countries, jurisdictions have looked at these points, or how academics analyze them. It's tricky sometimes because it's not only about the intellectual analysis, but how you present these complex and sophisticated points or arguments to the audience, which in my case are judges of the court. So I had a case quite a few years ago now that I remember really well, because there were sophisticated, complex arguments on both sides. I was for the applicant. The respondent was represented by counsel who also brought in sophisticated arguments in an area of law that is developing not just in Mauritius but across different jurisdictions, and it's not settled at all. It's in the area of international arbitration. And a few weeks before the hearing, both parties filed what we call written submissions. These are the written arguments of the parties. We submitted those documents to court, and these written arguments were supported by a load of authorities, materials, whether they're academic materials or judgments from other jurisdictions, to support the points that we raised in our submissions. And as I was preparing for the hearing, I relied I relied a lot on the fact that the judges would have not only read, but thoroughly analyzed the written arguments and understood them. And for example, in other jurisdictions, like in the UK, judges are given what we call reading time. Okay. So they're not sitting in court every day. They've got a few days to read a file before a hearing. That's not really the case in Mauritius. Okay. But I assumed that that's what would have happened, and that I would only have to respond to the arguments of my opponent and not have to make my own arguments. Yes. And the point here I'm making is that I assumed that they already had a foundation for the response I was going to bring in court. On the day of the hearing, we started, and within 10-15 minutes, I realized that the judges had, of course, read, but not fully grasped the arguments on both sides. And I was responding to the other side's arguments without having put forward my case, because I thought that my case was already clear from the written submissions. And so within 10-15 minutes of presenting the arguments in court, I realized that something was not going right. The message wasn't landing. So I had to think of how to reframe the submissions, the delivery of the message there. Yes. I'll pause here because I will come back to what I managed to do to resolve it towards a bit later in this conversation. Have you come across situations where a client comes to you with a complex message that they want to deliver? I don't know if it's a new product on the market that the market is not familiar with, or some sort of service that they're offering, or some sort of advertising message that they want to put across. But it's complex, and you have to walk them through on how to make that message land. Yes.
I mean, this is my everyday job, to be honest with you. Clients like this come to us every week with new challenges, new requests. And I will just go to my most recent one. We're running a really lovely campaign for a client right now. And the ask was something about market penetration. The brand is there. The brand is recognized, but we needed to change user behavior, users who know the brand, to adopt something new. That is a massive challenge, because change doesn't happen overnight, right? We know that. Facts, stats, they say everything. It doesn't happen overnight. So it was complex, not necessarily in the messaging, in what needed to happen. It was quite complex. And when the client came to me, we sat down. The first and foremost is listening. It is very important to listen to what the client has to say. That, gets you really, really far. Because if you think you know better than your client, it's lost. You've lost it. You're not going to hit bullseye there. Yeah. So it's listening. And then, of course, you're the expert, right? You need to be able to get the client to feel that they've come to the right people, they've come to the right agency. And this is what you will bring to the table, and this is how it's done. So when it's complex, you break it down. You understand who's your target audience, what is their behavior, where do they go on weekends, what do they do during the evenings, how much time they spend on Facebook. My job is positioning my client on digital platforms. I need to know where whoever they're going to talk to, what do these people do? How do they consume content online? How do they interact with the brand? So there's a lot of research that goes into getting a complex request and breaking it down into getting to the solution that you need to provide to that client. And this is the approach that we take.
I think it's interesting to hear you say that when a client comes in with a complex message that they want to that they want to put across, the first thing you have to do is listen.
Yes.
And also, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is you ask a lot of questions to get the information that you need to be able to have a good understanding of what their message really is, and then how you can work with that to make it simpler.
Yes.
And in in my line of work, it's not very different. Sometimes we have clients who come with complex stories. I do mainly commercial disputes, and these are sophisticated clients I deal with, but they come with complex stories on how this deal was structured 20 years ago and what went wrong along the way. And sometimes these are long stories, sometimes they're not. And when you ask questions, because you ask questions to understand a bit more. Sure. Sometimes they tell you, that's not relevant. And but I'm like, no, well, I still need to ask because I still need to get a full picture in order to really grasp what you are sharing. Sure. One thing I'm very conscious of in that process is for the client, they know their story in and out, but they may not know how difficult it is for someone else to understand and to hear what they're saying.
Very true.
And there's a book, Made to Stick, by Chip and Dan Heath. Okay. And they talk about, they phrase it as the curse of knowledge.
Okay.
And it's very much based on cognitive bias. Because you know something very well, it's difficult for you to imagine what it is like for someone who doesn't know it. Yeah. And what it leads you to do is to miss steps, to skip steps, to skip laying the foundation of the story and go straight to what you think is relevant to you.
Sure.
And but in doing so, you risk not being able to land the message.
That's it. I will just add to that.
Yes, of course.
Asking the questions, asking the right questions. I mean, there's no right or wrong question. When you're actually gathering information, it's about an information gathering process, right? Because you need to give a solution to your client. It can't be a miss. And like you say, it's this cognitive thing that the client may think that, I understand it. Why are they not getting it?
Absolutely.
Because it's in their mind, they deal with it on a daily basis. They know how it is. I may not know, but it's my job to ask the right questions, to get it out of his mind through the words so that I can find what's going to work for them, what's going to work for what they require, their needs at the time, and to give them the right strategy that's linked to that. I think this is really important, and it's a practice that, I mean, you can't move away from that. It is part of the process that to just get you there.
It just reminds me, a few weeks ago, I had a meeting with a client. So we were preparing for a hearing, and I said, look, I will ask you a few questions at the hearing to get your story out of you. So you be prepared to say who you are, when you started in your career. And I know that that's important to build the credibility of the witness, for the judge to be able to understand who's the person in front of them. What they did, how they started their career 20 years ago, what qualifications they have, may not be relevant to the actual issues in the case, but it's important for the judge to understand who is giving that evidence. And the client just told me, look, you're asking me questions about what happened 20, 30 years ago when I started my career. I don't know. I don't know. And that's not relevant to this issue. I don't have the time to waste on that. And it was interesting to then explain to him, no, I'm only asking you those questions because it's important not for you, but it's important to the person who's going to listen to you.
I will draw a parallel.
Please do.
When we do this kind of exercise with our clients, there is something that we literally ask all the time, is what has worked well in the past and what did not work. It's like really going back in the past to put your finger on the things that can be replicated and improved, obviously, and to perhaps those things that did not work doesn't mean that it's not going to work again, but it means that you rework it to retest, So the parallel would be, even if you think that it has no relation, no relevancy rather, with what the judge wants to hear or needs to hear, every single bit of information might help him in his decision or in guide him or gear him in, whatever needs to be done. This is exactly the parallel that I would draw is exactly this. We need that background. We need that, go back into history so we know what needs to be done for the client strategically.
Yes. Anjana, I'm going to ask you, I mean, of course, it's up to you if you can share or not, but is there any campaign that you could think of where the message was very complex, but you had to find a way to put it across?
Oh, I'll go back quite a few years. It was at the beginning of my agency career at Sphere Media. We had these few clients that we started off with.
Yeah.
It's a restaurant chain in Mauritius. And we needed to grab people's attention. It was complex. It was complex in the sense that there was a message. We needed to make sure that it doesn't go into fake advertising, but we needed to grab people's attention. Yeah. It was eat for free. The slogan was eat for free. How do you eat for free? You can't get everyone around a table and everyone expects to eat for free. Yeah. But it was eat for free as 5 people going, 1 person eats for free. Right. So you needed to grab the attention whilst not giving the wrong message at the same time.
Can't be misleading.
Yes, you could. You're never meant to mislead anyone through advertising and communication. Yeah. Whoever does that, I mean, they are not in the right place, right? They're not doing the right job. But this for me was very complex. But I have to say, it was, I think in 2012 or 13, I launched the agency in 2012, it was in 2013. For that time, for digital being just, nascent, I would say at the time, we had more than 8,000 people in a span of, I think, a month and a half who actually redeemed online vouchers for that campaign.
Right.
It was massive. It was massive. That allowed us to go multi-platform. You start from one message, you get people's attention, you send the right message, it's explanatory. At some point, people will get all the information. You're not misleading anyone. You get people to give the data in compliance with all the laws and regulations. Yeah. You send them SMS, you get them you get them coupons that they come to the restaurant. Your orders, you get your orders, you get your covers, you've done what you wanted to achieve. This for me was very complex because it was at really the real beginning of the agency. And we needed to make sure that even for us, it was a matter of reputation. Yeah. We couldn't get it wrong. We needed to make sure that whatever we said yes to our client to, or to propose to our client, we could see it through, first of all. And we knew it was right, and it would resonate with the audience, and it was not sending the wrong message. Yeah,
that's very important about how you simplify a complex message without misleading, or if I can say, without dumbing it down. And in of course, as a lawyer, when I have complex arguments or sophisticated novel points to raise in court, you're always conscious of the limitations. In my experience, the main limitation is time, because the judge wants to hear the case and then be able to have all the material they need to write their judgment after that. And you're thinking, look, I'm in front of an important person who's very busy, who has considerable work to do. I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to lose their patience. Sure. But at the same time, I have a complex message that I need to take the time to deliver.
Yes.
And there's a tension between simplifying things and dumbing them down.
That's it.
And it reminds me of, I think it was Albert Einstein who said, it's something along the lines of, you should always make things as simple as possible, but not any simpler.
Any simpler, yes.
And how do you do that?
Oh my God.
Especially, I can think of business meetings, for example, or investor presentations, where you have a complex idea, a novel point, or a novel strategy that you want to explore, but you also need to manage the expectation of your audience as to how much time you need from them to allow you to explain it to them as simple as it can be.
Exactly.
But let's talk specifically about social media.
Yes.
Because social media today is used, of course, for direct customer marketing, but also B2B marketing. I'm thinking of LinkedIn, for example.
Yes.
and you have investor presentations that are on LinkedIn, that you have annual reports of companies that are published on LinkedIn.
The budget, summaries of the budget, the facts, the main facts,
Exactly.
You get it within 12 hours of the budget having been announced and discussed.
So, but the specificity of social media, in my view, is attention span.
Yes.
And how do you get to be louder, or how do you ensure you are seen among the different things that are going around? But also, how do you make it simple so that it fits the attention span of your audience?
Yes, that's a really good question. How do there's so many facets of it, to be honest with you, before we put forward a visual. And it's not just about the visual. It's timing.
Yeah.
It's copy. What you write on top of the visual. Is it attention grabbing? There's a word that's been coined, which is stop scrolling, right? So these days, us, Gen Zs, whoever it is, we just go like this, right? It's TikTok, it's Facebook, it's even Instagram, even LinkedIn. You may be following someone, but whatever's being published is not to your liking, or you don't have the mood for that right now. So you need to have something that stops the scroll, right? For me, copy, is very important. And I have to say, I am also the president of the Association of Communication Agencies of Mauritius. And since the beginning of the year, we actually ran 2 webinars. And one of them was focused on copy to stop attention, to grab the attention of your audience and to stop scrolling.
What do you mean by copy? Sorry.
So copy, the ad copy, the text that appears on a visual, right?
Right.
That just grabs the attention and makes, hey, okay, what is it about? Or the
text
visual
in
itself.
Different color, background color.
Yes. It could just be 1 word, 2 word, or a few words, but that just grabs the attention. That you stand out from the others, because there's noise outside, there's noise online as well. Everyone is trying to push the same thing. Fast food 1 against fast food 2 against fast food 3. They're all selling perhaps the same kind of food, but what makes one stand out from the other? What makes one have their audience and their fans stop scrolling and then consume their content? This for us is something that we work on every day for every single client. It's not like, it's not a plug and play thing. It's not a one size fit all thing. There's research behind it. There is a thought process. There is data behind it. You need to know, let's just say, I'm just going to give an example. We launched a product, right? And we use this kind of visual approach. It's a flat visual, right? How many people interacted with it? What were the queries that we get? If we transform it, we make it into a mini animation, in a reel, in a story, what kind of interaction we get. So we are also testing at every single step of the way. You don't have a solution that fits every single scenario. You don't have a solution that fits every single brand or every single time of the day or every single audience or message. You seriously have to keep testing. And then, when, your statistics tell you what works best for this brand and when. This is when you build up on that.
Perhaps I'll go back to my courtroom story now and tell you
let's do that.
What happened. So as I mentioned earlier, within 10, 15 minutes, I thought, look, I'm getting blank looks and I have to adapt to the room. So I paused, and at the time, I think the judges were discussing amongst themselves, and I thought that's always a good sign that they are hearing what you say and they're discussing it, and that gives you time to pause as well. And so I asked, would it be helpful if I take a step back instead of responding to my opponent's submissions, to take the court to the arguments that I set out in my written submissions. And if that's an agreeable course, then we can fix the matter on another day to continue the hearing so that we can then address, so that I can then address my opponent's arguments in response to mine. And the judges, of course, thought that was a good way of dealing with it. Because to be fair, you need the time to digest complex messages, whether you're a judge, a CEO, you can be the smartest person, but if you don't devote your full attention to something, then the message just gets lost.
Yes.
And there's no winning party, because it's not a matter of whether they agree with my argument or not. Of course, that's their prerogative to decide, but everyone wins in the courtroom when you are heard.
That's it.
And then, of course, it's for the court to decide on who's right and who's wrong. Yes. But you lose the moment that you're not even heard.
That's it. For me, an interaction counts.
Yeah.
For a brand who's trying to showcase their product or position themselves as perhaps a new product or against competition or something that needs to be said and communicated. It's about having the right interaction with the fan, because it's the interaction that tells you that you've reached the right people or you've sent the right message. Whether it's a negative feedback that you're getting, it's still feedback. It still tells you what you're getting wrong, yes or no, if ever that's the right feedback. That's another story. But to kind of align myself with what you're just saying, it's very important, to actually be heard, but to get the right message in the right way across, and to seriously understand your audience, where they are at in that little journey of communication that you're having with them, because of the attention and everything, and you just stop. Just stop, you take stock, and then you communicate as you're meant to with the person or the people who are in front of you. Yes.
Let's talk about process. We're kind of wrapping up. We're coming to the end of the episode, but I wanted to ask you. Let's take the example of there's a big announcement by a company, whether they're rebranding or they're merging or they're acquiring, and they come to you for that exercise on how they make that announcement to the public or internally to their workforce.
Sure.
How do you prepare to ensure that the message lands? Of course, after having the brief, you've analyzed the brief, you've had meetings with them, and they tell you now go and design something, come up with some sort of announcement for us, an announcement strategy.
Yes.
How do you prepare, especially in those high stakes situations? There's a lot at stake because people might be fearful of their job. People might be fearful of whether they can use the product or where the brand is going.
Sure. That's a very valid question, because you need to understand your stakeholders first. Like you just said, if it's about internal communication, let's just take that as the example. If it's about internal communication, you need to be able to, at the same time, reassure people that, it's not something against the person, it's at the business level, but it's also taking all the stakeholders into consideration, taking all the different I would say impact that it could have into consideration, and then devise the communication based on who needs to know what. Okay, who needs to be put in reassured about certain decisions that, let's just say, management will be taking. Of course, there are decisions that perhaps need to be taken, and it's going to impact people. It's how you communicate that. What are the processes that you put in place to actually get it to the person, but then also the support behind. In terms of communication now, let's just take me as an agency who is involved in that process. It's about getting the right support material as well. Let's just say management has said that there's going to be a merger, right? And it needs to be communicated to external stakeholders and internal ones. First of all, there's the whole technical aspect of things. There is a technical communication that needs to go. So the communication itself is broken down. There's technical communication, there's employee communication, there's process communication. There are tools that you need. There's IT, there's communication for IT. So all of that is then broken down in a hierarchy until you actually get to the minutest thing that needs to be started from and built up. It's a top to bottom approach, but it's also a bottom to top approach, because you get the information, let's just say from management, but it needs to drill down and go to the right people, and then you start building, because then your communication has to go to the right people with the right content. So this is the way we proceed.
And you may not have the same announcement that goes to everyone.
That's it, because IT, let's just say it's a merger, right? For IT, the communication would be, what is it, how they will need to be working with the other team to actually, get the integration happen. For technical, there are things that are the technical fact sheets that need to be put in place. Financial team, and then that whatever needs to be communicated in the newspapers and everything. All of that, the communication is broken down to the different departments, the different people, and I'll go back to the different stakeholders.
Ranjana, there's a lot more that we could be discussing on this topic, but we'll draw it to an end. But there might be other opportunities, I'm sure.
Sure.
There's one question I ask to every guest at the end of the show. Who inspires you as a good communicator?
That's, there's no one answer to that, I have to say. But there's one thing that struck my mind once I was listening to a podcast and I watched the video. It's a lady called Brené Brown. She's from the University of Houston. She did a TED Talk on the power of vulnerability. Maybe it was me at the time who needed to consume that kind of content, but she talked about worthiness. She talked about being vulnerable and accepting the fact that you're vulnerable. But the way she communicated that, for me, because I have to say, I'm an engineer, I keep saying that, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution, because this is how I come to you. Yeah. How will I come back to you? And the fact that she backed her communication, whatever she had to say to her public, by data, by research, for me, it was fabulous. It was that managed to get what she had in her mind and through the research to the people, to her audience on the day. And if you look at her on YouTube, she has, I think, more than 5 million views. But it was a sensitive subject, who admits to be vulnerable? It's not easy to admit that you're vulnerable. But when you say that it's okay to be that, and she managed to do that, for me, she was fab.
It's about the credibility she brings.
It's about the credibility. When you're trying to communicate something, back it up, right? And she managed to do that. So I loved it.
I will look her up. Ranjana, thanks again for coming. It's a pleasure talking to you on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.